Eduardo punches one through the hole. Base hit. Here comes Lindor. Bleday with the throw to the plate. Lindor is safe, and the Mets win it. Arigato, thank you.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Shea Station podcast. It's Thursday, September 29th. The Mets have just split a 2-game set with the Miami Marlins, but it's a lot more than meets the eye. There's plenty to talk about. I'm one of your co-hosts, Jack, aka Jolly Olive. Joining me, as always, from Ohio is Jerry Blevins. Jerry, you didn't do anything remotely interesting this week, right? It was kind of just a boring week for you.
Just a normal, boring week. But boy, was that an amazing finish to game 2.
Absolutely.
Eduardo Escobar, arigato, thank you very much. I love that guy. I love him.
Maybe the best post-game interview ever that I've seen.
No. So Munenori Kawasaki.
Mets post-game interview.
Oh, okay. That I don't know. I let the fans. You dig, put a poll out. That was
a good poll. We should do that.
That was excellent on many levels. He did it in English, understanding the levity of the moment. He understood that there was a lot of emotion involved, so he wanted to give the people quick without any barriers. So first of all, making himself vulnerable in your second language, incredible, very brave. And he showed his sense of humor and why he's so beloved on every team that he's ever come across, because it all came out there. He was so happy to give the fans who have been there and been supportive of him all year, despite some of his struggles. New York has been known to bury people, especially when they have big expectations and they fall short. It would have been easy for the Mets fans to wear him out, but they didn't. And they supported him, and his teammates did, and the organization did. And he felt this outpouring of emotion because he felt like he's been paying it back, like it's a mutually beneficial relationship, and it showed, man. He was so appreciative of the fans. Just an absolutely incredible post-game interview after a game. It gave me all the emotions. Very happy for Escobar, very happy for the Mets fans in attendance, because that was a nail biter.
It sure was, and we're going to talk about it. I always just think back to that quote he had from the West Coast trip, I think in June, where he said, "One day I'm going to give them reasons to cheer for me." Well, there's plenty of reasons now, Eduardo. You did a damn good job in this series. We're going to get to all of it. First, I got to tell you about our best friend, the burger guys themselves, Bareburger. Thank you to them for sponsoring today's episode and presenting us throughout the postseason as well. They're a burger joint. They're not bogged down by labels, guys. How many times do I have to freaking tell you that? You keep coming to me and you're saying, are they bogged down by labels? And I go, no, they're not bogged down by labels.
No, they don't like labels.
They hate labels, so just stop asking about it. There's only one restriction. You'll be limited to food that's made to taste great. You can create your own favorite burger, and if you build your own creation, you should let them know that Jomboy sent you. Tweet it to @Bareburger for a chance to win a Bareburger gift card so you can get a free burger and drink after. Or if you just want to get stuff on the cheap, go to the Kitchen and Bar Happy Hour, because it's hands down the best in New York City. They polled every New York City resident, and they all said the same thing, that Bareburger is the best one in town, obviously. $1 PBRs, $5 meals, $5 martinis, half-off bottles of wine, available 7 full hours every Monday through Friday from noon to 7 p.m. Click the link in our description to find yourself at the best happy hour, tastiest burger joint, and overall great spot at order.bareburger.com. They're the best, they taste delicious, and we absolutely love them. Thank you to Bareburger.
Thank you, Bareburger.
Jerry, do you want to dive in?
Yeah, let's get right into it. This is a big 2-game set, so pretty crazy.
I got the fun one. I got the really fun game that everybody cares about.
Yeah,
you know
so
why?
Get in it.
Because Jerry freaking Blevins was on the call on this one, alongside Gary Cohen. Gary and Jerry on the call. Could the Mets deliver for my co-host? Well, maybe not. The Marlins load the bases against Cookie with a pair of hits and a hit by pitch in the first inning. It got ugly quick. They grab a 2-0 lead on a sacrifice fly, and then a wild pitch, which I think maybe should have been a pass ball, but it's kind of a moot point. They get a run there. It's 2-0 Fish in the first. They loaded up the bases again in the second inning, but Cookie's able to get a big double play and then a ground out to escape that jam. But Brian De La Cruz, the Met killer, his numbers against the Mets are far more better than any other team he faces. He doubles in the third, JJ Bleday homers, and it's suddenly a 4-0 game and a must-win game because the Braves are beating the Nationals. The Mets, meanwhile, after battering around Pablo Lopez all year long, they go 9 up, 9 down down in the first 3 innings against him. And Trevor Williams comes on to replace Cookie Carrasco in the 4th inning. So Cookie ends his night with a pretty rough start. 3 innings, 4 earned runs, 6 hits, 1 walk, 2 Ks, a homer. His ERA rises to 3.95. Not the start you wanted to see from Cookie here, but the Mets make it interesting. Nimmo singles, Lindor doubles, and Pete crushes a 3-run homer in the 4th inning. And suddenly it's a 4-3 game. The Mets are right back in it. Pete continues to carry with his power, but T-Will is not perfect once again. The Marlins load the bases off him, and LeBlanc punches a 2-run single, so the Fish get 2 back at 6-3. T-Will induces a double play of his own to escape his own bases loaded jam. The Mets get singles in the 5th and 6th, but Lopez ultimately escapes those, and he finishes a quality start, arguably his best start against the Mets this year. He's able to get the job done. Meanwhile, our bullpen is stellar once again. David Peterson looks sharp over 2 innings. Tyler McGill gets a scoreless inning. Edwin Diaz strikes out 3 because that's all he does, so they get 4 shutout innings from the bullpen. And the Mets offense didn't really wake up after that home run. They got a run in the 8th inning, so Jerry was in the booth for maybe one of the most peculiar things I've ever seen on a ball field. I definitely want you to talk about that after 3 balks by Richard Blyer forces in Jeff McNeil after he just kind of stood on first base after a 2-out single. But Dylan Floro looks sharp in the 9th inning. He strikes out the side to end the Mets' comeback hopes. The Marlins win 6-4. The Braves beat the Nationals, and there is once again a tie at the top of the NL East.
Lot to cover in that game. A lot of not great stuff. Number one, the big battle for the 4th starting spot in the postseason.
Does anybody want it? Who wants it?
So Cookie Carrasco, they both won it. Like, I won't question that, but he didn't look great. That's 2 in a row. He didn't, excuse me. His velocity, the zip on his fastball didn't look great. His slider was basically non-existent again. And to me, that's been the difference. When he has that slider, his split change is also effective. So he didn't look great. But Pete Alonso's huge home run was awesome. It felt like, all right, the Mets are going to come back. But then I don't think it was LeBlanc that had the RBI. T-Will had 0-2. And I think Stallings hit that 2 RBI single.
Let's fact check.
Yeah, but that was, to me, that was the nail in the coffin. That made it 6-3. It felt a little bit more daunting. But then Pablo Lopez on the other side looked incredible.
It was Stallings. You were right.
It was Stallings. Yeah. I mean, I had a good view.
Yeah, I mean, you were there.
So no offense. But Pablo Lopez, who has been crushed by the Mets, not just this year, his whole career, looked like he was facing everybody but the Mets again. Yeah. He had that zip, like he was throwing mid-90s, and then he had his changeup working. He looked nasty. And they still got 3 runs off him. That shows you how good the Mets can be offensively, because Pete Alonso did his thing. But the Richard Blyer.
Yeah, break it down for me. What the hell was that?
It was so strange. First of all, the Mets are down 6-3, and Pete Alonso's up and 2 outs, and McNeil's on first base. So we were talking like, hey, this is the perfect opportunity to attack Pete Alonso because he can't tie the ball game. So, you're not looking to walk him there.
Right.
And then he gets called for the first balk, and he is like questioned. Like, he's never had a balk before in his whole career, 8 years. And he gets called. And he's like, what did I do? So what he's doing is, like, his glove never really comes set. So technically it is a balk, but like, he's not trying to deceive the runner, which is number one. He's not trying to like pick him off, and it's not hurting the hitter. So usually that kind of stuff usually just gets glossed over. I've never seen it called. Then he calls it again from second base, and Blyer's losing it. He didn't change. He didn't make the adjustment, but also he wasn't balking.
Yeah.
The third one, like, I don't know what the umpire was seeing, but he gets called for the third one. What a stupid time for an umpire to put his stamp on a game. It was the silliest thing, completely unnecessary. Nobody in the whole ballpark, the Mets weren't saying, look, that's a ball.
Yeah.
Come on. So it wasn't like he was deliberately doing anything different, because he came out the next game and did the exact same thing. And pitched exactly like he has for at least 8 years. and nothing was called because he wasn't balking. So just bizarre. I've never seen anything like it.
It's a good thing
I'll
for a
never
couple
see
reasons.
anything like it again. It was wild.
Yeah, I mean, one, now you're on the call for one of like the biggest baseball oddity moments in maybe baseball history, 3 balks in 1 inning for a guy who had never balked before. But also exactly what you said, like nobody was like out there pointing fingers like that's a balk, screaming or anything. It was just that one umpire who had it out for him. I don't know.
Yeah, he must have like, I don't know,
beef.
had a
They got beef.
from all things I've heard, Blyer's a great guy.
Now they went to high school together. Dick Blyer stole his girlfriend. He remembered.
It was, I don't know, bizarre. But it was a tough loss.
Yeah.
The Mets looked kind of lackluster. They wanted Cookie to come out and like put his name in the hat as like, hey, I want this. And he didn't. He didn't look great. So that was, game 1 was pretty tough.
Yeah, and it's exactly what you said before. It's kind of like a who wants this game 4 start, because the last 2 starts prior to Cookie and Taiwan's Milwaukee and then Miami start, Cookie goes 6 innings, 1 earned run both times, gets the win both times, strikes out 17 in 12 innings. Taiwan goes 7 both times, strikes out 15, gets the win both times. So they both put together great starts, one after the other. It's like, oh, who's going to get the start? And then as soon as one slips up, the other one slips up. And we're going to talk about Taiwan's start as well. I think Taiwan was better than his line in game 2, and that'll be part of the discussion. But go for it, man.
Yeah. Game 2 of the 2-game set against the Miami Marlins. Kind of a big deal. It was Taijuan Walker looking to put his stamp on that 4th starter, looking to right the ship as the Mets fell into a first-place tie for the National League East. He was going against Jesus Luzardo, who is coming into his own as a starter, a big power lefty. They both look the part as they shut down both offenses through 3. The aforementioned Brian De La Cruz steps up in the 4th inning, and with 2 outs, he hits a 2-run home run in the 4th to give the Marlins a 2-0 lead. After a walk and a De La Cruz double, Taiwan is pulled in the 6th inning. He went 5, gave up 3 earned runs. He gave up 6 hits, 2 walks, 8 Ks, and gave up that big home run, 95 pitches. And then the Marlins grab another run on a Blade sacrifice fly off of Seth Lugo. Lugo stays on for a 2nd inning, gets the first 2 outs, but allows a walk and an RBI double in the 7th. Lugo, who struggled through this last couple runs, he's allowed 7 earned and 8 over his last 7 games. But in the 7th, McNeil leads off with a single. Escobar decides to greet Jesus Luzardo with a massive 2-run home run, his first 2 RBIs of the game. Luzardo, who had a really solid start, he gets pulled after 6. It's 4-2 Marlins through 7. Adam Ottavino tosses a 1-2-3 8th with 2 strikeouts, looking great. In the bottom of the 8th, the Mets load the bases on 3 walks, and then with 1 out against Tanner Scott in the 8th inning, Blyer comes in, induces McNeil to pop up on the first pitch, but up steps Eduardo Escobar, who scans the infield, sees the shift, batting from the right side, and punches a single through the hole, and that scores 2, and it is 4-4. In steps Edwin Diaz to the sound of the trumpets, who looked good in the day before in a non-safe situation, comes in a tie game and dominates. He goes 1-2-3 in the 9th on 13 pitches, gets birdie on 3 straight. Bottom of the 9th, Nito with a 1-out double, almost a 1-out walk-off home run, but comes up just short because he hit it to the deepest part of the ballpark in straightaway center. Behind him, Nimmo walks, but Jeff Brigham retires. Lindor and Alonso in the 9th, and the Mets go quietly. Top of the 10th, runner on second base. It's John Birdie, who they know is the fastest guy. He leads the major leagues in steals. And Drew Smith steps in another high leverage situation. He struggled since coming off the IL, but he looks fantastic. Gets a huge strikeout, followed by another strikeout with runners on second. He doesn't allow them to advance. And then he gets the last strikeout, a 97-mile-an-hour fastball at the top of the zone to not let them score in the 10th, giving the Mets a chance to walk it off in the 10th. And the Mets do just that because Eduardo Escobar punches a single for his 5th RBI, a game winner in a pivotal victory. that was the epic walk-off call. It was a beautiful game. Eduardo Escobar gets all 5 RBIs, including the walk-off RBI. It was a beautiful game. Well pitched by Taiwan. He comes up a little short because De La Cruz got him, but you had huge moments from Ottavino, Escobar, of course, Drew Smith, Edwin Diaz was nasty, and then the walk-off was to seal the deal, and the Mets win in 10, 5-4.
Beautiful recap. One of the games of the year for sure. So much to cover, and there's an obvious guy that we're going to talk about. Before we get to him, Drew fucking Smith, baby. What an inning. What a 10th inning for Drew Smith to really convince everybody that, hey, I need to be on that October roster. That was electric. Fastball was up to 97.5 on average. He was dotting. The slider looked good. That is the Drew Smith we know when he's healthy, and he looked absolutely sharp. Really glad he got that moment. Diaz obviously is Diaz because he strikes out everybody he faces. Ottavino continues to be sharp. The bullpen is going to be an unsung MVP of this game, but the real MVP belongs to Eduardo Escobar, who I think...
Let's talk Drew Smith for a sec.
Go ahead.
So, limited time, they threw him right into the fire, literally right off the bat. Not literally, it wasn't actually on fire.
Are you sure?
I hate saying that myself. I don't like when people do that. But right into the mix of high leverage situations because he can do things like this. He is one of the elite arms that can absolutely get swings and misses, which is crucial in moments like that where you have guys in scoring position. And so I love that Buck has stuck with him because they know if he's great, the team's way better with him at pitching at a high level, and he looked fantastic. His slider was really good, and that fastball had that jump on it, and he was keeping it at the top of the zone. And even what he's been doing inconsistently is getting them to chase when he's up in the count. So that last pitch that got the big strikeout was above the zone. Perfect pitch at 97, like perfect. That is hard to do. He looks like he looked better than he did even when he was going great in the beginning of the season. So that is a huge positive sign. If he's at the best, the Mets are way better than they are without him.
Absolutely agree. It just gives you another weapon at the back end, especially
an absolute weapon, not just a solid reliever. He's a weapon.
Yeah, and like Lugo has been so good for 3 months, and I think he's starting to slow down a little bit. We've seen his numbers go up in his last 8 appearances, but if Drew Smith can kind of come in and give him aid there, that's big for kind of the 7th inning question mark that has been a theme all year. What else we got here before we get to Eduardo? The Mets pick up Alonso and Lindor in kind of a rough game for both of them. They showed the stats of Alonso's numbers during losses. They looked very similar to how he did. He gets a golden sombrero, waved at a pretty bad slider in his last at-bat. Lindor, an uncharacteristic bad at-bat for me personally in the 8th inning. Tanner Scott walks the bases loaded, and Lindor swings on the first pitch he sees from him. Good pitch to hit, but still, I think you take a more disciplined approach there.
I think one there, I wanted to say Alonso after hitting 40 the night before, awesome. He looked out of sorts today. Luzardo was nasty.
Yes, he was good.
And a big left-handed fastball at 97 plus, a really good changeup and an underrated breaking ball. The guy's he was a first rounder, big time prospect. He's starting to come into his own a little bit, battled injuries. So he looks good. So I give Pete, who looked incredible for a long time, had a rough night, and that's fine. Lindor, again, Ronnie talks about it on the broadcast being the incredible pro that he is. He talked about there's 2 different schools. The guy just walked the bases loaded. You don't want to swing at the first pitch, but the pitching coach came out and talked to him. And so sometimes that's the best pitch is the one he's like, all right, I got to get ahead here.
Right.
Throw it right down the middle. The ball was up and he popped it up. He was kind of trying to lift instead of staying on top of it. Broke his 13 game hit streak. I think.
Believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. So he ended I think he also had a long reaching base safely streak as well, but I don't mind that. He's done so well all year. He actually
did get a hit last night. Never mind. He got 1 hit.
Oh, he did.
So
awesome. So ignore all that. Cut that out. But Lindor, who's made great decisions especially offensively all season long. I'll give him, I'm not going to be upset with him.
No, yeah, that shouldn't be like the point of all this. I think if anything, it's a good thing because the Mets have proven that even on nights where they don't have their two best hitters going, they can still go out and win a game.
Absolutely. That was critical for me. And again, we'll get to Escobar in a bit and McNeil, who's unsung forever.
Yeah.
But I really loved what I saw from Taijuan Walker. Like his line doesn't look great, but he was sharp. His velo was a little bit back to where we're looking. He had that slider going, and his splitty was nasty. And he made an adjustment early on because he felt like he had a good fastball, but they were sitting on it and jumping on it.
Yeah.
And he made the adjustment. Him and Nito were like, look, if they're going to just swing at fastballs, I'm going to throw my splitty all day long. So his ability to not only be sharp with his stuff, but to see what's going on. Like I really liked what I saw from him. He challenged De La Cruz, got him like he did everybody that this series but if I had to make a decision about the fourth starter right now, which we don't, there's another start to be had,
right.
But Taijuan is hands down the guy that looks better.
I mean, he got 11 whiffs on that splitter yesterday. It looked really, really sharp. It was up 1.5 miles per hour on average, which is huge because that velocity was dipping in recent starts. And I also just love that Taijuan really felt the weight of how important that start was. You saw when he came off the mound after that De La Cruz home run, shaking his head furiously when he got pulled. He was pacing up and down the dugout. Like, that guy cares. That guy wants that game 4. He wants the ball. He wants to be a part of this rotation. And I think that, not to say that Carrasco was taking it lightly by any means, but I think that Taijuan's been waiting for a moment to redeem himself since last year. And I think that the line isn't great here, but I still think 8 strikeouts is nothing to scoff at in 5 innings. Like, that's a good start. You just made one mistake.
He also had a couple of things not go his way, some check swings, some close pitches. Again, the line doesn't look great, and ultimately it's about results, but he looked really good. I liked his demeanor. I liked everything I saw from him for the most part. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So very promising.
Absolutely.
It isn't like one of these guys is going to get a start by default in the playoffs. He looked like very capable of handling anybody in a situation.
And if anything, it might just be one of those starts where they go one time through the order and it's a short thing and you rely on your bullpen a lot because you have 3 guys that can eat 6 or 7 innings in a huge spot right in front of those guys. Like, you have that opportunity.
Yeah, but I like what I saw. So,
all right, it's time.
Let's talk about Eddie Escobar.
Let's fucking talk about Eddie Escobar.
Gosh, it was so good, wasn't it?
Go ahead.
The Mets are down 4-2. In the 7th, he gets a huge home run, right? In the 8th, he gets a huge single. So he hits a home run, pull side.
Yeah.
4-2. He shoots a single through 4-4, and then comes up in the 10th and punches like another single through for 5 RBI. Like, incredible game. Just, he played great defense. He was calm at the plate. I love what I'm seeing from him over the last month, but like, he looks like a clutch style player in crunch time, in those big moments.
I want to say 2 things. One is that he had the home run from the right side pull. Then he gets the tying 2-run single from the right side, oppo. Then he hits from the left side in the final at bat, and he goes oppo again. And he was just finding the gaps in the infield. He was hitting it where they were, and it looked like he was doing it with intent as well, which was huge for me. And also, I loved that Disha Thosar told everyone about this afterward. Escobar said he knew right before his at-bat that the Braves had lost and that this had become a must-win game. And for some people, the added pressure might hinder the at-bat and make you have a worse approach. For Eduardo Escobar, I think it ignited something in him, and that's really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, even Buck acknowledged that everybody knew what happened. This is all the times, like a couple of weeks ago, understanding that you try not to pay attention to what's going on. This is a fact that everybody knows what the Atlanta Braves are doing.
Yes.
Again, they know they have to take care of their own business regardless, but they know what the Braves are doing, and it's especially meaningful because they're going to Atlanta to play in the biggest series of the year. So I love this team has been so open and honest. And from a media standpoint, it's been so refreshing to cover a team like this because there's no bullshit, like glossed over, this
No
is
rat
what's happening.
raccoon.
These guys have been very honest about the highs and lows that they've been experiencing, about what they've been thinking, what they've been going through. Like Drew Smith, I'll talk to him again about that. He's answered the call when he's given up a lot of home runs in big situations. He stood at his locker and answered it. And so to see him stand at his locker after such a great 10th inning, and he talked about, look, there's a few things that in his maturity. He knew John Birdie was on second base, the major league stolen base record. He knew he had to go for a strikeout here. So, and then when you're advancing in your career, you're not just worried about executing at the plate with your own stuff, understanding who's at bat, who's on base, the situation as a whole. Like, it's a big deal. That is showing me so much polish from Drew Smith as a professional big league pitcher. He's got another step in him. I loved it. So guys have been open and honest, and for Escobar to come through, and then his post-game interview was just like so endearing and delightful to watch.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell that the veteran leadership that was added to this club has had a ripple effect to the younger guys. And it's just been like a year of accountability. No one's throwing anyone under the bus. And on the night, Eduardo Escobar goes 3 for 5. The rest of the lineup goes 2 for 30. This was his game. He carried the weight of the offense. I have a fun stat for you. Are you familiar with the stat win probability? Do you know?
Yes.
Okay. So Baseball Reference and Fangraphs, they measure how much percent of a win probability a player adds in their own at-bats. Eduardo Escobar adds or subtracts, correct, yes. And Eduardo Escobar had a 0.75 WPA last night, so he was responsible for 75% of the win probability. There's only one guy this year who has a higher win probability added in a single game. Can you guess who it is?
No. Aaron Judge.
Well, on the Mets, I mean. In a Mets game this year.
Probably Pete Alonso.
So Pete Alonso is third. Number 1 is Mark Canha for that Philly game where he hit those 2 home runs.
Oh, yeah. That'll do it.
So he's up at 80% for that. But that just goes to show that if Eduardo Escobar even has one bad at-bat that night, the entire outcome of the game could completely shift.
And all of his big hits were in the clutch.
All of them. 7,
8, and 10. It's
crazy
every time
stuff.
He stepped up with the game on the line, basically, he stepped up as well. Like just pure clutch gene coming out. Like, that was wonderful.
And I guess that should take us to the apple of our eye today, which is a real tough one. It's a real toughie.
I mean, we have 2 guys, right?
You got 2? I got 1.
We have 2.
I got 1.
You go then.
I wonder who it's going to be. It's going to be Eduardo Escobar for me. 3 for 9, a run, a homer, and 5 RBIs, all in one game. You almost forget that he went 0 for 4 in the first game just because of how important he was to the Game 2 win. He's batting .341 in September, 8 home runs this month, 24 RBI, an OPS of 1.049. He becomes the first Mets third baseman with multiple games of at least 5 RBI and multiple walk-off hits in a single season since David Wright. David Wright did that in 2012 and 2008. That guy's pretty important from what I hear. We go through the woes, the ebbs and flows of this entire season, but when it comes down to it, Eduardo Escobar is going to end the season as a plus hitter, a plus defender, and I think no one's really going to remember that midseason soon. They're going to remember this September performance and whatever he's going to do in October. So he's the apple of my eye.
Well deserved. I mean, one of the best games ever by a single player. That is the Eduardo Escobar game.
Yes.
Like, that's what it is. That's the Eduardo Escobar game. That's so cool.
So you said you have a second person?
I have more than one person.
Whoa.
So that, I mean, he's obviously
a double apple lock.
He's it.
Yeah.
But I'm going to give a couple of things. One, Edwin Diaz, who people were worried about his inactivity, about him staying sharp. I actually got a chance to chat with him and before game 1. And I talked to him about his prep work. I never would question him, but I just kind of wanted to get a feel for him.
Sure.
And he showed up and he threw 2 innings, gave up 1 double, but he was dominant. 6 Ks in 2 innings. Beautiful. Yep. So he's a candidate. The bullpen as a whole pitched 11 innings and 18 punch outs, and they only gave up 3 runs in 11 innings. Like, Pretty big deal there
Stellar.
too.
Yes.
And 2 of those came on a 0-2 pitch that, was a mistake from Trevor Williams.
Right.
But then there's Pete Alonso, who in game 1 hit his 40th home run, a big 3-run shot to get the Mets within 1. It didn't end up working, but he put the team on his back again. 40 home runs in a single year. It's a big deal.
Yes.
But my apple is going to Mr. Jeff McNeil.
Wow. I'm
Jeff
interested
McNeil,
to hear
who
this.
I feel like has gone under the radar for us as a whole.
Yeah.
Not under the radar, but he never is the apple winner, always the bridesmaid, never a bride.
Yes.
He goes 4 for 8, scores 2 runs, has 2 walks. The guy just sets the table. He gets on base. He makes things happen. And when you do that for guys like Lindor, Alonso, obviously Eduardo Escobar, Mark Canha, if you put yourself in these situations all the time, it is such an uplifter for the Mets offense. He puts pressure on the defense. He finds holes. He hits lefties. He hits righties. He's just kind of been doing it all year long. And I haven't chosen him a bunch because guys are hitting extra base hits or big home runs. He's been deserving so many times. I felt like I haven't chosen him enough. So the apple of my eye is the flying squirrel, Jeff McNeil.
Well, I love that he's getting some love. I told you before we went live that I've been tallying up all the apples from the year because we're going to do a little retrospective episode at the end. Would you believe, Jerry, that this is the first time this year that you have picked Jeff McNeil for the apple of your eye?
No, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised.
Pretty crazy. I was shocked to find that as well.
Yeah, I mean, he's done this. He's been 4 for 8 or, 5 for 11. And then another guy has like a 6 RBI series.
Yes.
He hasn't done anything like he has done, but this is kind of what he's done all year. He's hitting 320. He's second in the National League in hitting behind Freddie Freeman.
Yep.
It's wild what he's doing all year. And so I have kind of glossed over or overlooked him for a shinier series. But as a collective, I gave him this in a series of 2 games, maybe making up for the slights in the past on my apple. But gosh, the guy's just been electric.
Yeah,
as a hitter.
And I mean, like, this was a series where, especially game 2, where the big guys, Pete had his big home run, don't get me wrong, but when all else fails, Jeff McNeil's still going to give you 4 hits in 2 games. He's still going to walk twice. He's still going to score runs. That's a guy that you can always rely on because he's always taking good at-bats. And that's the life of the table setter, kind of. You don't always get the awards, the acclamation, the love, but he's just as important to the offense because you got to get guys in front of the Eduardo Escobars of game 2 because then those hits mean a whole lot less when they're not scoring runs. So I love that you gave him some love. First apple of the year from Jerry to Jeff. How about that?
What a shocker.
How about that?
I mean, he's deserved it so many times. How many times have you given it to him?
I've given him my apple 5 times.
Okay, so even that's probably on the short end.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, we'll do a full dive in because I'm really excited because, it took me a couple hours to get to everything.
So we'll get to it.
Yeah, we'll get to it eventually.
We've got some fun episodes coming up.
I mean, we got a fun episode right now because we got to talk biggest series of the goddamn year. I think I'm right. I mean, I got a few notes here. Alonso and Escobar lead MLB and RBI in September. Very, very cool. The Mets are 10-2 in extra inning games. First time they've won 10 since 2004. Starling Marte probably not going to return for this Atlanta series. We'll talk more about that. But I think I'm going to let you go.
Yeah, I'm gonna Marte. It doesn't sound promising for him to be ready in the end of the season. It's a finger. When they sent him back to New York early for extra imaging, right. I felt like that was a kind of a dire sign. I hope he's back because he's a huge part of what we can do. So
a massive piece.
Comes back and we've seen what we can do without him, and the Mets are very capable of being great without him. But he's definitely a dynamic player that would help this team.
Definitely agree.
All right, you ready for the biggest series of 2022?
I'll never be ready, but let's do it anyway.
Coming up, this 3-game set in Atlanta for all the marbles. The Mets come in with a 1-game lead on the Atlanta Braves for the National League East title with 5 to play or 6 to play for the New York Mets. I think the Braves have 7, including we have an extra off day. But this is the biggest showdown. The Mets have lined up their top 3. The Braves have lined up their top 3. So this is a battle. If there was ever a regular season series that is like the playoffs, this is like the World Series of the National League East. Game 1, Friday, the greatest pitcher on the planet, Jacob deGrom, looking to bounce back from a weird, shaky Oakland outing. He is 5-3 with a 2.93 ERA on the year. He's going up against the unsung hero for the Atlanta Braves, Max Fried, Mr. Reliable, who's just been dominant for years for them. He is 13-7 with a 2.5 ERA on the year. Austin Riley, big, thick third baseman himself, is 5 for 17 with 2 home runs against deGrom. Pete Alonso, 8 for 30 in his career. Mark Canha, 4 for 10, both with 2 home runs against Max Fried. deGrom and Fried last faced each other, where Fried won a 3-2 game. deGrom in Atlanta this year, 12 1/3 innings, 5 earned runs, 6 hits, 21 Ks to 1 walk. Max Fried versus the Mets this year, 2-2, 24 innings pitched. He's got a 3 ERA and a 1.04 whip. That is game 1 on Friday. Game 2, Saturday, Mad Max Scherzer, the other ace of the New York Mets. He's 11-4 with a 2.13 ERA, going up against Kyle Wright, the 20-game winner, the bright spot of this young rotation for the Atlanta Braves. He's got a 3.18 ERA and, like I said, 20-game winner. Ronald Acuna, Marcell Ozuna, and Travis d'Arnaud have all homered twice off of Max Scherzer. Pete Alonso, the heart of our order, is 4 for 11. Tyler Naquin is 3 for 6, both with 2 home runs against Kyle Wright. Scherzer versus Atlanta this season, he is 3-0. He's got 20 1/3 innings pitched with a 0.7 whip and a 2.21 ERA. Kyle Wright versus the Mets this year, he's 0-2, 13 innings pitched and 9 earned runs, given up 5 home runs, 3 walks to 7 Ks. That is game 2. Game 3, Sunday, the end game. Chris Bassett, the best number 3 pitcher in all of baseball. He is 15-8 with a 3.27 ERA, going up against the old man himself, Charlie Morton, Mr. Clutch, Mr. World Series broken leg guy, 9-6 with a 4.29 ERA on the season. Dansby Swanson, William Contreras, Michael Harris II, Robbie Grossman, and Marcell Ozuna versus Chris Bassett in their career combined 0 for 19. No Braves hitter has more than 6 at-bats against Chris Bassett, the newly National League pitcher. Mark Canha, Eduardo Escobar, Jeff McNeil, Francisco Lindor, and James McCann have all homered off of Charlie Morton. This year, Chris Bassett versus those Braves, he is 1-1. He has pitched 13 innings. He's given up 4 runs. He's got 14 strikeouts to 3 walks. Charlie Morton versus the Mets, a different story. He's 1-2, 17 innings pitched, 9 earned runs, a huge 21 strikeouts, but also 7 walks. That is your game 3 of the biggest 3-game set in 2022. All eyes will be on this series all across baseball because this is the number 1 race still left open.
That was a loaded preview. Well done. That was probably
that was a lot.
That was the thickest preview of the year. I'm very proud of you. That was tough. That was a good one. All right, a lot of implications for this weekend. I'm going to go through them really, really quick so that you are in tune with what's going on. So, if the Mets go to Atlanta, play Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and they win all 3 games, they sweep, they will clinch the NL East on that final game in Atlanta. Huge. If they take 2 out of 3, it would lower their magic number to 1 for the final series of the season. That means 1 Atlanta loss, 1 Mets win, the Mets are in, they win the division. If they win 1 of 3, they still control their destiny in the final series of the year. There's going to be a little implication with the Braves playing the Marlins, but if you take 2 or 3 against the Nationals, you should be fine. You'll end in a tie, and the Mets will win the tiebreaker because they have a better record against Atlanta than Atlanta against them. The catastrophic situation is if you get swept, because then you'll lose your tiebreaker, which means that if you tie the Braves will win the division. And then you'll trail by 2 with 3 games to play, which means you'll need at least 2 wins against the Nationals, and the Braves will need to at least lose 2 out of 3. A lot going on there. So the Mets, obviously, I think with the move to put Jacob deGrom at the front of this series is to try and win early and get ahead in the series as quickly as possible and ensure that you get at least one win, because that tiebreaker is going to be massive. The Mets winning 4 out of 5 in Citi Field is standing up huge right now, because you split the first Citi Field set 2-2. You went to Atlanta, you took 2 of 3 to go ahead 4-3, and then that 4 of 5 is standing up, because after losing 3 of 4 in Atlanta, still you have 2 games above 500. You're 9-7. So it's kind of a game of inches right now, but you have 3 fantastic pitching matchups in this series. DeGrom versus Fried 2. The Mets have hit Kyle Wright really well, and then Charlie Morton is really interesting because they faced Morton on May 3rd, back when Morton kind of had a slow start to the year. He gave up 5 earned runs in 5 2/3 innings. Then they faced him again in the series in Atlanta, where they lost 3 of 4, and Morton goes 6 2/3 shut and strikes out 12. So you don't really know what Charlie Morton you're going to get here, because the Mets have had 2 completely different outings against him. What we do know is that Max Scherzer has balled out against Atlanta this entire year. He's pretty much the lock to give you a great pitching performance against them. 3-0, hasn't lost to them yet. ERA well under 3 here, a whip well under 1. It's gonna be stressful, man. It's gonna be a stressful series.
Yeah, stressful, but this is what it's all about, man.
Yeah, man.
This is it. This is the best. Meaningful games, high stress. This is sports.
Yeah.
This is what I love. And all Buck and Billy and these guys have done is set this up perfectly.
Yeah.
It worked out well for the Braves too, because they moved Max Fried to make sure he faces game 1 and gets the Mets. And they actually got a win by their guy. We moved it back and it didn't work out. The Braves won, they tied it, but having a 1-game lead is huge. Thank you for those, possibilities of clipping that. We'll clip that and send that out for sure.
Sure.
Because that is important, because you don't know the ramifications. I think after game 1, we'll reassess and go through that. But this is huge. Jacob deGrom looked vulnerable for the first time, but I'm looking for him to bounce back in a very familiar place. He's pitched a ton. Then you got Max Scherzer. It's what you gave him $6 billion a year for. And then you got Chris Bassett, what you traded for, this Mr. Solid to come in and be clutch. There's no moment too big for this guy. He's done it. He steps up. This is perfectly placed. This is if this were the World Series, I wouldn't be surprised. This is how it's set up. This is what the Mets are going to do. I'm excited to see everybody perform here.
Yeah, I mean, it's the biggest series that this Mets franchise has played in 7 years. Essentially. I mean, it's been a long time since the Mets fans have had something to care about to this extent this late in the season. One more thing I want to say is that the Mets, they have a 9-7 record against the Braves this season. 3 of those losses came when Taiwan gave up 8 runs in 1+ innings. Cookie went down in the second inning with an injury. Taiwan went down in the second inning with an injury. The Mets are 9-4 when they get 3 innings from their starters, and you got DeGrom, Scherzer, and Bassett. I'd be shocked if any of these guys gave you less than 5. This is putting yourself in a great position to succeed. Obviously, someone's going to get that game 4 ball, but I feel really, really, really confident. Even though we're going to Atlanta, we're 3-4 there this year. I feel confident that if the pitching is on, we're the better team. Flat out.
Well, I think so. I think that's fair. They're a great team too.
They are.
There's a reason why it's been a battle all season long. They're set up. They got Kyle Ray has 20 wins. Max Fried has been a Cy Young candidate for like 3 straight years now. And Charlie Morton, they signed him to be the guy to carry them to the World Series, which he did so bravely last year. He's come in. He's had a rough start to the year, but he's looked better as of late. This is it, man. They're missing Spencer Strider, who I think would start instead of Charlie Morton.
Yep, definitely.
But he's on the IL. That's a big loss for them, because he's been probably maybe the NL Rookie of the Year, apart from Michael Harris II, who's probably going to win now. Yeah, they've had some young guys step up, but they're missing him. He's a weapon. Kenley Jansen at the back versus Edwin Diaz. I'll take Edwin Diaz all day long, although Kenley has a great track record of being successful.
And
Our bullpens line up.
Our bullpens line up pretty well. I think we're getting our bullpen at a really good time now. I think the last time we previewed a Brave series, we did talk a lot about how hot their bullpen was and how cold ours had been going into the series. Now you have Adam Ottavino, who's been on an absolutely fantastic stretch for pretty much the entire year. Edwin Diaz is Edwin Diaz. You just got a great showing from Drew Smith, a very encouraging showing from him. Seth Lugo's had his hitches, but he still had a great year. Like, you have weapons at the back there. And I'm looking at this Braves lineup, and there's one name that is popping out to me right now, and it's Matt Olson. Now, the tale of his September has been that it's been a long-winded slump. Going into September 25th, Olson was 8 for his last 83. Everybody knows about that. What you might not know is that his last 4 games, he's begun to turn a corner. He has a 4-game hit streak now. He's 5 for his last 14, 2 home runs, 5 RBIs. The Mets fans especially, this is an address to you. Don't go in there thinking that Matt Olson is cold. He's an easy out. He's still Matt Olson. He's still an incredibly dangerous hitter, and it looks like he's just started to figure something out again. You don't have to deal with Ozzie Albies again because he's injured. He's back on the injured list, but everybody else is still here. Everyone else is still producing. Some of the guys have had cold second halves, but this is still a lineup that absolutely bangs. And one guy that's really hot right now for them as well is Marcelo Ozuna. So it's kind of just pitfalls.
Ronnie Acuna.
And Ronnie Acuna started to find it.
2 home runs the other day.
Yeah.
He's been banged up and dealing with, his knee, but he's one of the most dangerous, one of the most dynamic players in the league. So this is a great series. I'm so excited for baseball. This is wonderful. This is scary. And so scary. As a Mets fan, you probably wanted to be a little bit easier coming in, but it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Enjoy it. Enjoy this.
Go to a bar.
So Darno, he's been great all year. Contreras has been excellent. Matt Olson, obviously the big guy they traded for. Dansby is having the best year of his career offensively and defensively. Austin Riley has now been the MVP candidate, stepped up. He looks like an absolute lock to be their, in their top 4 hitters for a long time. Eddie Rosario is kind of starting to come out of his shell a little bit. Ozuna looks better. I still can't believe he's in a Braves uniform.
Wild.
I can't believe
Wild.
So I think that might be like bad karma for them to keep that guy around. But they are dangerous. Michael Harris is hitting 300 in his rookie season. Like, it's pretty incredible what these guys have been able to do. Vaughn Grisham, another guy, Grissom, who's another guy that's came up and done really well for them. They're a team. They're a good team.
I mean, like, you put it pretty well. Like, if you're a Mets fan, you want it to be easier than this, but if you get the win here and you get your 100th win in Atlanta, you take the series, you win the division, it's going to be all worth it, Like, that's the risk you run with a series like this, and the Mets and September have some pretty bad memories associated with them together. But I do think that, as little as it may seem in the rearview mirror once we're past this series, the Mets getting that big win against Miami and the Nationals walking off the Braves, both teams have an off day today to sit in that and let it stew and really think about, man, I could have been a game ahead instead of them being a game ahead and vice versa. And I think that carries some weight. I think it definitely does.
Yeah, I mean, there's no team. The Braves are reigning World Series champions. Most of these guys were there last year, so they're not going to be, impacted by the day off and thinking about it, but they will understand the intensity. Max Scherzer, DeGrom, Chris Bassett, these guys have all pitched in huge, high-leverage playoff games, so they're not going to be impacted. This is just a showdown of 2 Major League Baseball powerhouses vying for the NL East title. Like, it's the only bad part about this is that there's games after this.
Yeah, I mean, it would be awesome if it just ended after this series. It would be fantastic.
Man. Yeah, it's wonderful. Kenley Jansen has had a solid year. He's got 37 saves. Had some shaky outings. They traded for Raisel Iglesias, who's been their setup guy, who's dominated since he's been over there. AJ Minter had a couple of rough patches, but he's established himself as an absolute incredible lefty out of the bullpen. Colin McHugh, we've had his number, but he's having a great year. Dylan Lee's had an incredible year. Jackson Stevens, like, these guys have showed up. So this is a battle, and this is 2 heavyweight, titans coming at it. Like, this is everything that you hope for coming into the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think I got nothing else. It's just you gotta watch the best baseball of the year unfold.
I'm gonna be so sweaty watching that.
Get a beer, tear your heart out, tear your hair out.
I'll be doing pre and post game, watching this game, taking notes,
wearing a suit, just absolutely pouring sweat through it.
I'm gonna just put some like paper towels underneath.
I think that's what you need. You need to lather up the deodorant.
That's the one thing that's missing from the SNY studios. Beautiful setup. We need like a shower in there, so I can like
a little locker room action. Definitely agree. All right, man. You got anything else?
I don't, man. This is exciting.
All right, Mets fans, we're here. We're here.
Love it.
We'll see you guys Monday.
For Jolly and Jack, I'm Jerry. Let's go Mets.
LFGM.
LFGM.
Arigato.
Arigato. Darimashite.